Silence isn't the absence of noise, boy. It's a presence. It's a cold hand that slowly tightens around your throat until the sound of your own heartbeat feels like a hammer striking an anvil. In the convent of St. Martha, the sisters didn't pray with their voices. They prayed with their fear. They knew that in that place, if you speak, the guest comes to collect the echo. I am Samuel, and my silence was bought with blood. I walk the road where the crows don't fly, under a bruise in a bleeding sky. Got a cross in my hand and a ghost on my back, and a heart that's faded into black.
When I first examined the Mother Superior's remains years later, I didn't find the marks of a demon, I found the marks of a terrified architect. Her vocal cords had been systematically scarred, not by an external force, but by her own will. She had turned her body into a tomb to keep a secret from escaping. Samuel arrived at the convent during the height of the Great Famine. The world was starving, but St. Martha's was hollowed out by a different kind of hunger. He described the approach as a climb into a vacuum. The mountain path was littered with the carcasses of birds that had fallen mid-flight. Their lungs burst as if the very oxygen had turned to lead. Samuel sat atop his horse, a silhouette of leather and gray hair against a sky the color of a fresh bruise. He told me the silence of the courtyard was so heavy it made his ears bleed. Even Amen, the shadow that lived in the folds of his cloak, was agitated. The demon's bird skull-head twitched rhythmically, its beak clicking in a frantic, soundless code Amen feeds on the noise of human suffering. But here, there was no harvest, only a vast, suffocating void. Samuel struck a light for his cigar in that absolute stillness. The sound of the match was like a gunshot. The blue smoke didn't drift. It coiled around him like a protective spirit. He pushed open the heavy oak doors and found a line of black-veiled sisters. They stood like pillars of salt. Their hands were wrapped in blood-stained linen, their fingers chewed to the bone to keep from screaming. He was led to the Mother Superior. She was a woman who had once been a scholar, a woman I might have called a peer in another life. She sat in a room lit by a single guttering candle. She didn't speak, she didn't blink. She simply pushed a piece of parchment across the table. Her lips were stitched shut with humid hair, a jagged crimson embroidery of penance. The note read, "The guest eats the echo." Samuel looked at her, his cigar glowing in the dim light. He realized then that the convent wasn't a place of worship. It was a larder, and the guest was getting ready to dine. The night in the convent was a masterclass in psychological collapse. Samuel spent the hours in a small cell, the walls sweating with damp rot. He told me he could hear the guest before he saw it. It wasn't a sound of feet or wings. It was a sound of displacement, a low, wet hum that resonated in the marrow of his bones. He left his cell, his silver cross wrapped in a scarred fist, the blue smoke of his cigar acting as a sensory anchor. He found the sisters in the refectory. They were gathered for a midnight vigil, but there were no candles. They sat in the pitch black, 100 women breathing in perfect, terrified unison above them. Clinging to the vaulted ceiling like a translucent parasite was the guest. Samuel described it to me with a shudder. It was a mass of shifting membranes, a creature born from the spaces between words. It had no eyes, but it felt the world through vibration. Every heartbeat in that room was a dinner bell. Every involuntary sigh was a feast. Suddenly, a young novice, a child who had not yet mastered the art of total stillness, let out a soft, dry cough. The air in the room didn't just move. It curdled. The desk dropped from the rafters like a falling shroud. It didn't bite, it didn't claw. It enveloped the girl's head, its membranes pulsating as it began to drink the very sound of her soul. She convulsed, her hands scratching at the stone floor, but no sound escaped her. The creature was siphoning the frequency of her existence. Samuel lunged forward, but the air around the creature was like thick, invisible oil. His movements were sluggish, his strength robbed by the unnatural vacuum the creature created. He realized then that his prayers were useless. The guest didn't care for souls, it cared for the physical energy of noise. He reached for a cigar, the ember dying, and blew a massive, concentrated cloud of blue herbal smoke directly into the creature's pulsating center. The effect was instantaneous. The creature of pure sensory input was blinded by the acrid spiritual weight of the smoke. Ever coiled, its membranes shivering with a sound like breaking glass, the girl fell to the floor, her throat bruised and her voice gone forever. But the guest was no longer hunting. It was enraged. It expanded, filling the hall with a high-pitched, crystalline shriek that made the sister's ears burst with blood. It knew where Samuel was. And it knew he was the only thing in the convent that still had a voice to lose. Samuel understood, and that you cannot fight a void with silence. To survive the guest, he had to become the very thing the creature feared, a source of unyielding chaoticence. He didn't run for the gates, he ran for the heights. He sprinted toward the spiral stone staircase of the bell tower, his heavy boots echoing like drum beats against the damp masonry behind him. He could hear the guest, a wet, sliding sound that seemed to rewrite the air as it moved. The staircase was a narrow, suffocating throat of stone. Samuel's breath came in ragged gasps, each exhale a thick cloud of blue smoke that left a trail for the creature to follow. He could feel the guest's proximity. The air behind him turned ice cold, and the hair on his neck stood up as the vacuum began to pull at the oxygen in his lungs. Ammon was no longer whispering. The demon was clawing at the inside of Samuel's skull, terrified of being consumed by a hunger even more hollow than its own. He reached the belfry. It was an open stone gallery exposed to the biting mountain wind. In the center hung the great bell of St. Martha, a massive, oxidized bronze giant that had held its tone over half a century. The guest burst into the chamber, expanding its translucent membranes until it looked like a shimmering, predatory curtain draped between the arches. It opened its jagged, pulsating maw, ready to inhale the priest's life. Samuel didn't reach for a sword, he didn't reach for a prayer. He took the last, most potent drag of his cigar, feeling the bitter herbs burn his throat. And then he grabbed the heavy iron clapper of the bell. With a roar that came from the darkest depths of his crusader past, he struck the bronze. The sound was a physical blow. It didn't just vibrate in the air, it shattered the silence like a hammer through glass. The guest recoiled, its membranes shivering violently. Samuel didn't stop. He struck again and again. Pium boom, he accompanied each strike with a primal scream. A Vocles blowed with the friction of his penance. With one final cataclysmic strike, the guest shattered. It didn't die so much as it dissipated into 1,000 harmless whispers that were carried away by the mountain wind. The vacuum was gone. The air returned, sweet and cold. And the sun finally crested over the jagged peaks. The convent was no longer a tomb. Below, in the courtyard, the sisters were weeping, a beautiful, messy, human noise. They were talking, laughing, and mourning with their own voices. Samuel stood alone in the bell tower. his cigar a cold stub. The silence in his own head finally absolute. He told me that for 3 days after, he heard nothing. Not the wind, not the birds, and for the first time in years, not Anan. He had traded his hearing for their voices. He left the convent of St. Martha without a word of thanks. He didn't need it. He had heard the sound of a demon being unmade by a human scream. And for a man like Samuel, that was the only choir he ever wanted to hear. Samuel moved on before the first prayer could be sung. He was a man who spoke with fire and lived in a smoke, leaving a trail of broken silences behind him. But the road ahead was growing darker. The next stop was a city of masks and shadows, where the plague didn't just kill the body.
Oh, like the urban, let the blue smoke rise to hide the devil from my tired eyes. Silver for the demon, lead for the soul, in a world that's spinning out of